roots of this story go back a little over 100 years. My great-grandfather was starved to death by the Bolsheviks because he wouldn't turn over his crops to them, the crops he needed to feed his family. When that happened, my grandparents packed up everything and fled westward. They caught a ship to America, lost an infant son on the way, but when they disembarked on Ellis Island, my grandmother bent down and kissed American soil. Like my grandparents, I love this country, but I hate what is being done to it. The qualities of our national character that made us good and great are being stripped away at an accelerating rate. The more I thought about that, the angrier I got. So I decided to write a novel, put my anger on paper. But I soon realized that anger alone was not going to make an encouraging, uplifting story. Well, I put my anger aside for a while, did some research, then plotted a story illustrating that the breakdown of the balance of power within the branches of government have left us vulnerable to the consolidation of all power within the executive branch. I extrapolated that scenario into the near future and put someone in the Oval Office, someone who I'll call Saul Alinsky's closer for radical reformation. You know, the guy that takes the mound in the bottom of the ninth and strikes out all of the opposing team's batters. I turned this into a 3-book series that will be rolled out across the election year, 2016, because I wanted people to realize that this election is critical. So I painted a picture of how close and how vulnerable we are to losing this nation, how someone without scruples could come and just take it from us. Well, Jonathan Turley, who's a liberal constitutional lawyer, is very concerned. He's testified in front of the House Judiciary Committee every year for the past 3 years. The subject of his testimony, executive overreach. I've read several law review articles written by constitutional lawyers that explain how the president wields power that he should not have. The president alternates between executive fiat, creating laws that he should not create, by using executive orders, presidential memoranda, and implementing those as policies within the departments and agencies that have the effect of legislation that should be passed by Congress. On the flip side of this, the president uses prosecutorial discretion, where he chooses which laws to implement depending upon his priorities. The problem goes beyond the executive branch. The judiciary is complicit, because for many years they've refused to review any complaint that has to do with problems with the balance of power between the branches of government. This leaves Congress with only 2 options: the power of the purse and the power to impeach. To be frank, congressional leaders just haven't had the guts to stand up against the left-leaning media, which influences their constituency. Impeachment starts with articles of impeachment in the House, but ends with a trial in the Senate requiring a 2/3 majority to remove any government official from office. But the 2016 election could be the start of restoring this balance of power if we elect a president who will not overreach his or her limits of power and authority. Well, I write fiction, so my first obligation is to entertain my readers. If I don't do that, anything else I try to do is moot. But we should never underestimate the power of story to impact people's lives. Now, Jesus knew this, and he was the master storyteller. He used fiction and he used true life stories to make his points, and people listened. Well, in telling my story, I needed to appeal to a broad audience. And not too many women read political thrillers. So I decided I needed some help. So I secured the services of one of the best writing coaches in the country, Susan May Warren. And she helped me splice in a romantic thread that was so integral to the thriller plot that even men would enjoy it. Another thing I tried to do, I hoped millennials would read this story. So my hero and my heroine are 24 and 21 years old, respectively. The methods used by my fictitious president are realistic. They have been used by a sitting president, up to the point to where my president pulled the trigger on his plans, creating chaos and bringing in the necessity of martial law. These methods are all outlined in the prologue of the book, and they follow very closely with Saul Alinsky's tactics and other information I pulled from a book called Theory of Tyranny. Saul Alinsky was a radical, best known for the people he impacted in the 60s. He was a mentor of Hillary Clinton and indirectly a mentor of Mr. Obama, President Obama. He taught community organizing, had it down to a science. He in turn was mentored by Al Capone's enforcer. When the president in my story pulls the trigger to create chaos, all the dominoes have been lined up and they fall over. The executive orders, the presidential memoranda, all come into play. Chaos is created and the people want an end to it. They want the government to intervene. What they get of martial law. This all happens late in the president's second term, before the political conventions in the general election year. And since the country is under martial law, the political conventions will not happen, nor will the election. Now, the triggers of the chaos that I use in my story are a deadly outbreak for which the government conveniently has a vaccine. And you can have the vaccine if you comply with his demands. The second trigger is financial collapse caused by pulling out the rug from underneath the props to the economy. Props that currently exist today. Artificially low interest rates and the printing of money, a lot of money. The third trigger is a terrorist attack on large oil refineries, impacting the gas supply, causing gas rationing, which impacts the food supply, giving government control over it. There are other things that happen relative to the military, but I won't reveal those at this time because they're spoilers. Now, do I believe all this will happen? I hope not. Are we vulnerable to it? You bet we are. The first takeaway is the message that we are in imminent danger of becoming what I call the DSA, dystopian states of America, a nation I don't want to live in, and I shudder to think of my grandkids being raised in. The second takeaway is that the 2016 election is critical. We must elect people who believe and adhere in the Constitution of the United States. The third takeaway is that we need to prevent us from having to take that last desperate measure of stopping a runaway president. That would be a military coup or a revolution. We fought wars on our soil before, and a lot of good people died. There are some character development takeaways from this story. One is that don't let anyone ever tell you that you're not good enough to do something that the God who created you in His image placed in your heart to do. And also, remember, you can always trust God. Hard times don't mean that He's abandoned you. But besides all that, readers will get an action-packed page-turner about a courageous young couple that they will love and root for. That's what the reviews are saying, and this is only book one of a 3-book series.